Miami's coaching staff has been on point so far from Mario Cristobal on down, but defensive coordinator Corey Hetherman, he's been the MVP.
You are Locked On Canes, your daily podcast on the Miami Hurricanes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Friday. We made it. I am Alex Donno, University of Miami alumnus, co-host of Locked On ACC and host of Postgame on the Hurricanes Radio Network. And thank you so much to the everydayers for making Locked On Canes your first listen. We're available free wherever you get your podcasts. We're free on YouTube. We're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Mazda. Like our players, we sweat every detail because when you make every move count, pulling off the unexpected is only the beginning. Stay tuned later for highlights in this week's Moving the Game Forward. Mazda, move and be moved. On this fun Friday episode, since Miami doesn't play this weekend, another bye week, we're going to go through the schedule, top 25 games and ACC games, and I will tell Miami fans who we should be rooting for and who we should be rooting against based on factors like strength of schedule, rivalries, conference opponents. We'll take a look at the schedule, have some fun with that. I'll be answering you guys' questions. Got some really good ones from the Locked On Canes Insiders chat. But I want to talk about best coaches and players so far, team MVPs to this point. I know Miami still has a lot of work to do. I'm not, pretending the season is over after 5 games. You still have 7 regular season games, 7 ACC games, 1-0 mentality and all that. But I also think it's okay at the bye week to take a look at top performers and individuals who have really helped the team succeed to this point. Miami's number 2 nationally right now, but they're not satisfied. We talked about Mario Cristobal yesterday doing these interviews. He doesn't want to hear from these analysts like David Pollack and all these guys, oh, I've got your team number 1 in the country, coach. Mario does not want to hear that. There's a lot of work still to be done and a lot of ways this team can still improve. But Miami's in the spot that they're in right now because of some stellar performances. And if you want to start with who's been the most outstanding coach so far, I would say everybody on the staff has done a really good job. But Corey Hetherman, Miami's new defensive coordinator, this man needs to be spotlighted because, yeah, the personnel is better than it was last year, but the defense is so much better than it was a year ago, where they struggled to be a top 70 defense in the country last year. That unit is absolutely flying to the football. They're swarming. They're tackling well. They're playing aggressive. They love playing for Coach Hetherman because he allows them to play fast and free. It's just been a sensational turnaround. And, I talked about it before the season started, how impressed I was with Coach Hetherman last year. He spent 1 year at Minnesota. He took over a not good Minnesota defense and in one season got them into the top 10. And he might do that now at Miami. So Miami right now ranks 16th in total defense. 16th is already pretty good, but I would say it could be a lot better moving forward because you consider 5 games into the season, Miami's got the best resume in the country in terms of strength of schedule and who they've beaten to this point. Miami's played a much tougher schedule than a lot of the other teams have nationally to this point, and they're still top 16. So you're going to have a chance to pad those stats even more moving forward. Hurricanes, for example, just played and beat the team that has the most prolific total offense in the country, talking about Florida State. Miami right now are 16th in rushing defense, and that is despite going up against an FSU team that was top, and I think still is top nationally in rushing offense. Miami went up against Notre Dame's vaunted running back duo of Jeremiah Love and Jadarian Price, and they shut that duo down. And South Florida, USF, had a really good prolific rushing offense, and Miami was able to keep them bottled up as well. So top 16 in rushing defense, very good. Miami is also number 16 nationally in third down defense. Third down defense is one of the most important stats out there. And their best performance on third down this year, as we all remember, in that Florida game when they held Florida's offense to 0 for 13 on third downs. Corey Hetherman is doing a heck of a job, and he has been the MVP of the coaching staff so far. Maybe the co-MVP or like the honorable mention Jason Taylor coaching the defensive ends because Rueben Bain, Akeem Mesidor. We've also had some, good moments from Marquise Lightfoot and Armando Blunt, like that group. I mean, very great at the top, but also the depth has been very good. And so, Jason Taylor deserves to be mentioned as well. Defensive MVP so far for Miami, Rueben Hurricane Bain, leading the nation in quarterback pressures. Bain is in the backfield constantly, and he's the highest graded player nationally, period. Highest graded player regardless of position, according to Pro Football Focus. The guys at PFF College, our friends Dalton Wasserman and Max Chadwick, have actually been trying to promote Rueben Bain for a possible Heisman campaign. He might deserve it at the end of the year. Probably won't win it because, defensive linemen don't win that award. Typically goes to quarterbacks, receivers, running backs. But Rueben Bain deserves to be in that conversation. Offensive MVP to this point, I'm going to go with Carson Beck. Florida State tried to take away and didn't do a terrible job at trying to take away Miami's running game. They were like, yeah, you know what? Carson Beck, that's the guy we're going to make beat us. He did exactly that. Explosive plays, deep balls were on point. I mean, the one that he missed was that opening deep ball first quarter to Malachi Toney that was really, really close. He hit Malachi Toney and C.J. Daniels on deep balls, connected with those guys throughout the game. And Beck, he's currently the favorite, odds-on favorite to win the Heisman Trophy right now at plus 500 odds, ahead of Dante Moore of Oregon at plus 700. Carson Beck, who plays the most important position in football, has his leadership, his poise, his experience, and also his NFL caliber arm talent have helped Miami get to this point. Carson Beck is my offensive MVP to this point. Best freshman, Malachi Toney. He's not been the only really good freshman. Shout out to Bryce Fitzgerald, who's got 3 interceptions right now. But Malachi Toney has been not only the best true freshman, best freshman on this team, but one of the best, if not the best freshman in the country right now. And he comes off a 100-yard receiving game, 2 touchdowns against a rival, first road game of his college career. Malachi Toney's been putting on a show this season. Best specialist, I'm going to say kicker Carter Davis. I know he did hit extra points, obviously. He didn't get called for any field goals in the Florida State game, but Davis, he's perfect on his field goal tries so far, perfect on his extra points. He's hit a couple of clutch field goals already this season, including the game winner against Notre Dame. So I'll go with, and also he booms all of the kickoffs through the end zone, which is big. So I'll go kicker Carter Davis as the best special teams player so far. Best unit, it's got to be either the offensive line or the defensive line. Man, splitting hairs. I'm going to go offensive line, only because, defensive line, I think, gets a little bit more attention because of sacks and stuff like that. I mean, this offensive line, they have protected their quarterback. Statistically, they protected him better than any other quarterback has been protected in the country. And even though the running game didn't blow up against Florida State, it blew up against everybody else. I'm going to go with Miami's offensive line as being the best unit on the team. Best transfer who doesn't play quarterback, I'm going to go with safety Jacoby Thomas, who we've really been pumping up on this show because he deserves it. He's got an interception. He's got 2 sacks. He actually has as many sacks as Rueben Bain has this year, which is kind of crazy to think about. Rueben is always in the backfield, though. But Jacoby Thomas has produced these disruptive plays at safety. He's got 2 forced fumbles on the season. Jacoby Thomas, to me, I can't think of like a bad rep or let alone a bad game that he's had so far this year. He's been great. I would say the best play of the season so far was the C.J. Daniels one-handed catch against Notre Dame. First game, but, one of the better highlights you're going to see nationally, especially in a big game like that. So I'm going to go with that one-handed grab by C.J. Daniels. Most underrated. I thought about this for a while today. Most underrated, I'm going to go with true freshman offensive lineman who's been playing a lot of fullback, S.J. Alofa-Tuli. And I say underrated because, again, like, people don't think about this guy, but I think he's wearing the number 46. When number 46 comes into the game in short yardage, Miami's going to pick up a first down. Like, it always seems to happen when he comes in playing fullback. He even had technically a reception on that weird like tip ball or whatever it was by Emory Williams in the Bethune-Cookman game. S.J. Alofa-Tuli, I know, again, it's been quiet, but he's been really, really good. So I'm going to say he's like the most underrated so far. Best win, I'm going to say Notre Dame. Miami's got some good wins already to choose from, but I'm going to say Notre Dame even over the Florida State win because that was the first game of the season. Notre Dame was favored, so Miami, that was the only time probably all year that Miami's going to be an underdog in a game, and people just didn't know what Miami was capable of. Like, very few people believed Miami was going to win the trench battles against Notre Dame. Very few people believed that Carson Beck is still as good as he is. A lot of people were writing Beck off after last season and after the injury. So he went out there and proved the doubters wrong. I mean, that was a win. I mean, people have had a certain amount of respect for Miami since that Notre Dame game that they didn't have before it. So I'm going to say ND was still the biggest win so far. Biggest surprise of the season has probably been the production of the wide receivers. Miami lost so much of their production from a year ago, and what they have gotten this year, specifically from C.J. Daniels and Malachi Toney, who have been downright dominant. A lot of folks weren't expecting that, and Malachi Toney is doing first couple of games. He was 17 years old. Now he's doing it at 18. True freshman, early enrollee. It's really been great. Best off the field so far. Rueben Bain's notebook. That like psychotic notebook where he writes down those slogans and all those things about his opponents. I feel like we haven't seen the photos of his notebook in a couple weeks. I want to start seeing a little bit more of that, but I mean, you can tell Bain is so focused. All this guy thinks about is football. All he thinks about is the next opponent. He's not looking ahead. He's trying to go 1-0 every single week, and he gets himself psyched up with those crazy notebooks of his. All right, we're going to talk a little bit about, fourth quarter stuff. We got some questions from Locked On Canes insiders, conservative play calling versus execution. I want to get to that, talk about Miami's roster improvement from last season. And remember, later on, we're going to talk about who you should be rooting for this weekend in college football. You want to keep it locked right here. We're only getting started on this brand new Locked On Canes. Guys, it's almost the weekend, and it's time to look back and crown this week's MVP on Who Delivered, powered by DoorDash. Just like you can win every Saturday with DoorDash Streaks, saving more every time you order, these players delivered when it mattered most. Let's break it down. For the Miami Hurricanes, Malachi Toney delivered in a big way. 107 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, should have had 3 touchdowns. When the pressure was on, Malachi Toney came through against Florida State. No hesitation, no delay. And if you've been watching week after week, that performance wasn't a fluke. Baby Jesus, as they call him, has been on a streak this year. And just like Malachi Toney delivered for the Canes, DoorDash delivers your Saturdays. With DoorDash Streaks, you save every Saturday you order. Stack it up all season, and you can save up to $250, including $100 in DoorDash credits. Order this Saturday. Keep the streak alive. Fuel your game day only with DoorDash. Terms apply. Promo code goes through November 18th. We're also proudly brought to you by FanDuel. Guys, we mentioned Miami favored by 14.5 points against Louisville. We're still, over a week away exactly. It's next Friday. In a week, line may change a little bit one way or another, but that's what we're looking at. NFL season is in full swing, guys. FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you'll unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Guys, I love how FanDuel gives me so many ways to play. I've built parlays. I've tried player props. I've even followed the live lines during games. Whether you're a casual fan or you love diving into the stats, FanDuel makes the game day experience so much better. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Thank you for making Locked On Canes your first listen. For your next listen, make sure you check out Locked On ACC. Kenton Gibbs and I and Jackson Holzer from Locked On Syracuse. We take you around the conference. All the big stories, been very Belichick heavy this week. All the big stories around the ACC, we cover it on Locked On ACC, available free wherever you get your podcasts and available free on YouTube. All right, we get Locked On Canes insider named Sammy. And by the way, if you want to try it free, become a Locked On Canes insider, try it free for 14 days. Click the link in the show description below. Sammy says, hey, not really a question, but I want to give a huge shout out to the staff for their talent evaluation skills and development ability. So many impact players that we have were not rated as high as they should have been, and Mario and company have trusted their eyes. It's giving late 1990s to early 2000 vibes. You're every time Malachi Toney makes a big catch in a game, we're always reminded that he was a 3-star prospect. I mean, is Malachi Toney playing like a 3-star prospect? Rueben Bain, coming out of high school, was a 4-star, not a 5-star. And when you're not a 5-star, it means the people who come up with those rankings do not believe that you have first-round NFL draft potential, because they reserve the 5-star grades to future first-round picks. I got news for you. Not only is Rueben Bain going to be a first-round NFL draft pick, he could be a top 5 or even a number 1 overall pick. So should have had that 5-star rank. I mean, you can go on and on, players who were 3-star and 4-star who were playing like 5 stars out there. An important thing about the evaluation process, Mario and his staff are downright maniacal about it. They do not offer high school players without scouting them in person. Like, that's a must do. So that requires extra diligence. It requires extra work, extra travel to go out to these extra games. Like, they're not going to offer a player based on hype, how many stars they have, or what their highlight reel looks like, because highlight reels can be misleading and manipulative. Like, you don't really know till you scout a player in person, and they stay true to that. And listen, sometimes they're going to offer a player who may be a 3-star that other staffs are like, oh, that's not a great player, because they understand when you scout these guys in person. And also scout players based on how they're going to fit your roster and fit your culture. Don't just offer players to offer players. I know that that's something very important to them. And with the development part of it, I'm really happy to see the way that some of these players that Cristobal, recruited 2, 3, 4 years ago, that they have improved during their time in college. Because people used to knock Miami for that. Like, oh, players go to Miami and they don't develop. And, we see guys. I mean, Rueben Bain, Mark Fletcher, Keem Mesidor. I know Mesidor wasn't originally a Miami recruit, but that was a great transfer portal find a few years ago. Like, you see these players are absolutely developing. And also, I'm so happy to see quarterbacks thriving in Shannon Dawson's offense. Because you remember Mario Cristobal, people used to call him a quarterback killer. That used to be a narrative. And you had number 1 overall draft pick at quarterback last year. Even if you could say Miami didn't fully develop him, because a lot of that was done at Washington State and whatever, but he had his best season at Miami, and they certainly didn't kill his development. And now Carson Beck is raising his stock, possibly back into the first round with what he's doing at Miami. So, yeah, I mean, listen, I'm happy to see the way that the recruiting and the development is going here. We get a question from Mr. Valentine. Now, I happen to pick his question, even though got a ton of questions like this. So others ask similar questions. He says, hey, I think we've all noticed that in the fourth quarter, the offense seems to be non-existent. Do you believe Mario and Dawson will be more aggressive in the fourth quarter moving forward? I'm concerned it could cost Miami a win in the future. What do you say? I also listen, I think it's a little unfair for anyone to just only look at play calling for these fourth quarters or the various lulls, because against Florida, it was more of a third quarter lull than a fourth quarter. But to just say it's all about conservative play calling, there's like a pie chart for this, and like play calling is a part of that, maybe even a small part of that, because execution of what's actually happening on the field, I think, is an even bigger part of it. And I'll give you my examples here. So here against Florida State, Miami, you could also easily say they took their foot off the gas with a 25-point lead. Miami gave up 19 unanswered points in the fourth quarter, okay? Part of that, only 17 yards of offense. And part of that was being conservative by design, but I think equal parts execution, if not more execution. Better execution could have converted the fourth down attempt to Malachi Toney. There was another play where Beck threw on a 3rd and 7 to Keelan Marion, threw it behind him. Was not great execution on that play. Would have been a first down, would have killed the game. Either of those would have killed the game. It looked like the players on both sides of the football, especially on defense, got relaxed in the fourth quarter, going through the motions. That wasn't all play calling. Another one of Miami's fourth quarter offensive drives got derailed by a holding penalty for 10 yards. Penalties. We'll talk more about the penalties in a second. And yeah, as far as like the conservative thing goes, like Miami definitely, we try to lean on our running game with a lead to shorten the game, force the opponents to use their timeouts, which is important because if you're, throwing incomplete passes, they don't have to take timeouts. I think this is an obvious correction after how Miami blew the game against Syracuse last season by not shortening the game. Now, your defense also couldn't make a stop last year, but the offense didn't shorten the game. So I think we would all probably rather blow teams out. I think that's fair to say. But personally, I'd rather hold on for a close win than play aggressive and lose, which is what happened against Syracuse. Going back to the penalties, I mentioned Miami was penalized total 13 times for 114 yards against FSU. A lot of that was in the fourth quarter. On defense and special teams, 3 personal fouls, including a targeting in the fourth quarter. Miami's defense gave up 188 yards in the fourth quarter. Now, you could say the offense, left him on an island with 3 and outs and all that, but still the defense wasn't good, nor the offense was good in the fourth quarter. Miami also had a shanked punt in the fourth quarter that gave FSU the ball at midfield. Referees, for what it's worth, weren't calling a lot of obvious holding penalties on Florida State when their offense started scoring. But listen, overall, I am glad that we've raised the standard in Miami high enough that fans can get frustrated when we don't blow out good teams, right? Teams like Florida State, Notre Dame, even Florida are not necessarily easy to blow out with their talent. Miami used to lose these games. Now we're not winning these games by enough. So, but I do agree. Like, I'm not just saying, hey, all of this is just great, fine and dandy. Like, I think Miami does need to learn how to finish teams, right? Learn how to step on the throat. But I'm just saying it's not all play calling. Like, there have been other factors that have led to these lulls we've had in games. And I think these are all things we can learn from and things Miami can get sharper at in terms of finishing games in the future. Speaking of finishing games, we're going to be watching a lot of games this coming weekend. Not Miami, though. Miami is on the bye week. Their opponent, Louisville, is also on a bye this week. But I'll give you guys my guide going through top 25 games and ACC games, who Miami fans should root for this weekend in terms of building up our resume and our strength of schedule. You want to keep it locked right here on this brand new episode of Locked On Canes. This episode is brought to you by Mazda's Moving the Game Forward. For those who believe it's not just about playing the game, it's about redefining it. There are moments that do more than put points on the board. They move crowds, move culture, and keep moving the game forward. I'll tell you who's moved the game forward this year. Carson Beck. You think about the doubts. Oh, he's coming off surgery. Is he going to be the same physically? Is Carson Beck a good leader? Does he love football? Did he go to Miami because he was following a girlfriend down there? Carson so far has been the ultimate teammate, the ultimate competitor, and his experience coming out of the SEC came to Miami with a 24-3 record as a starting quarterback. He's now 29-3 as a starter. Like, this is like almost Ken Dorsey territory when it comes to Carson Beck's win-loss record on the field. He has been a consummate professional this year, and he's got himself into first-round NFL conversations again because Carson Beck continues to move the game forward. When you follow what moves you, the unexpected is only the beginning. And just like there's more to every highlight, there's more to a Mazda vehicle. Mazda, move and be moved. Thank you so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. All right, so guys, college football is my favorite sport. I enjoy college ball more than I enjoy the NFL, more than I enjoy the NBA. I do enjoy the NHL since the Panthers have been winning championships, but college football is still king for me, guys. And with Miami off this weekend, we'll take a look at the other top games and who Miami fans should probably be rooting for in these situations. You got a game tonight, Friday night on ESPN2, 24th ranked USF on the road at North Texas. Big conference game. North Texas is actually undefeated, and North Texas is favored by 1.5 at home. Unless you just hate South Florida for whatever reason, because, hey, if you consider them an in-state rival or whatever, Miami fans should be rooting for USF tonight for obvious reasons. Keep them ranked. They're ranked 25th. They'll stay ranked if they win. If they lose, they're going to fall out of the top 25. 24th ranked South Florida, really good for Miami's strength of schedule if they beat North Texas tonight. So we root for them. Noon on Saturday, number 1 Ohio State at number 17 Illinois. You probably root against Ohio State in this spot because if Ohio State loses, it's a good chance Miami could, even in not playing this weekend, Miami could move up into the number 1 spot if the Buckeyes lose. So you probably root for Illinois. You don't face either of those teams this year. You know, I guess there's a chance you could face one or both of them in the playoffs, but I think you root for Illinois, who are 14.5-point underdogs. You root for them to pull off the upset. Number 8, Alabama at number 14, Mizzou. Listen, you may have your own, biases against Bama and your own hatred, and if you do, that's fine. I understand they're not a very well-liked program by outsiders, but for strength of schedule purposes, you root for Bama, right? Bama lost to Florida State, who Miami beat, so it is better for Miami's resume if Alabama wins again. They're 4-1. Florida State's their only loss. They're a top 10 team. So you have logical reasons to root for the Crimson Tide to beat Mizzou this week. Same thing can be said for 25th ranked Florida State hosting Pitt this weekend. Now, again, I will not fault any Miami fan for rooting against the Seminoles. If you want to do that, that's fine, and I'm not going to lie to you. If Pittsburgh wins that game, I'll be smiling. I never mind watching Florida State lose. But again, logically, even though Miami plays both this year, you play Pitt at the end of the season on the road. Florida State at number 25. I think it's better for Miami's resume if they win because Pittsburgh less likely to be ranked at the end of the year unless they beat Miami. None of us want that to happen. Florida State, if they beat Pitt, Florida State stays in the top 25. Miami's schedule looks better right now and probably at the end of the year as well. So, you have logical reasons to root for Florida State, even though both of those teams are on the schedule. FSU is favored by 10.5 points in that game. Washington State against number 4 Ole Miss. You have no reason to root for either of them, honestly. Washington State, they're 31.5-point underdogs. They're going to get destroyed probably at Ole Miss, but, if an upset happens, that'd be fun. Number 3, Oregon hosting number 7, Indiana. I think you root for Indiana in this spot. Oregon, because if Indiana has a good resume so far, if Oregon beats them in dominant fashion, there is a chance that they jump Oregon in front of Miami while Miami is on the bye week. They've done that before. It happened a couple weeks ago with Oregon after they beat Penn State. So you root for Indiana to pull off the road upset in this spot because Indiana, I doubt, would move from number 7 ahead of Miami at number 2, where Oregon might, okay? 3:30 on Saturday, number 6, Oklahoma at unranked Texas. For logical reasons, you root for Texas in this spot because Florida, who Miami beat, has a win over Texas. That affects your resume. Nothing Oklahoma does affects the resume to my knowledge, so you root for Texas. Oklahoma's favored by 1.5 on the road. Well, actually, it's not on the road. Actually, they play at a neutral site. So a Red River rivalry. You root for Texas in that spot. 13th ranked Georgia Tech hosting Virginia Tech. You root for Virginia Tech. Miami plays them in the regular season. We do not play Georgia Tech. And Georgia Tech being unbeaten in conference, you want as few unbeatens as possible because there is a scenario where Miami, Georgia Tech, and Virginia are all undefeated in conference at the end of the year, or possibly Duke as well. And then it would come down to a tiebreaker that is not in Miami's control. It's like winning percentage of common opponents. So Miami no longer has control. So you want Georgia Tech to lose to Virginia Tech, and also because Miami plays Virginia Tech later on this season. And by the way, I want to address something for the 1,000th time, because I keep getting comments from people who are like, Donno, why do you keep saying Virginia's unbeaten in conference when they lost to NC State? Why do you keep getting this wrong? I'm not wrong. The ACC is wacko. But so, yeah, Virginia, who's undefeated in ACC play, they did lose to North Carolina State, who is an ACC team. But for the 1,000th time, that was a non-conference game. They scheduled each other as an additional game because they needed to find an extra opponent, so it doesn't count against the ACC record. So there is a scenario where Virginia Tech could get into an ACC championship game over Miami, despite having a loss to NC State, and Miami could hypothetically be undefeated and still miss out on an ACC championship game because of that. Number 16, Notre Dame against NC State. Both teams on Miami's schedule already beat Notre Dame. I think it's better if Notre Dame wins, actually, because much more of a chance they stay ranked than North Carolina State gets ranked. So I think it's better for Miami's strength of schedule if Notre Dame wins. But again, if you want to root against Notre Dame for rivalry reasons, I wouldn't fault you for doing that. But I think it is better for Miami's resume if Notre Dame wins. Florida at number 5, Texas A&M. You could go either way on this one. I think it's actually better for us if Florida wins, because that is an opponent where we don't play Texas A&M. But since Texas A&M has a win against Notre Dame, who Miami also beat, you could make the resume argument either way. Maybe you just want to watch Florida lose, or hear me out, maybe you want to watch Florida win a few more games to try to keep Billy Napier's job. So I could go either way on that one. Let's take a look at the ACC specific games that we didn't talk about. Stanford at SMU. Miami plays both of them, so they're both on the schedule. I think I might root against SMU, though, in this one, because SMU is 1-0 in the ACC. Stanford is 1-1 in the ACC. So SMU, you want less unbeaten ACC teams, so you probably root for Stanford to pull off the upset. Let's see. Wake Forest at Oregon State. Oregon State is awful, but you root for Wake Forest because that would be a really bad look for the ACC if they lose to Oregon State. And Clemson against Boston College. Doesn't matter. You know, you might root for Boston College just because it's funny to watch Clemson lose, because I'm not a big Dabo Swinney fan. So, you know, you probably root for BC. BC's bad. Like, they can't stop a nosebleed on defense. So Clemson is favored by 13.5 points. They should win at BC, but you probably root for BC to win. Thank you guys so much for making Locked On Canes your first listen. I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your Friday. Enjoy your college football weekend. Enjoy the bye week, but, you know, spend some time kicking your feet up and watching these great college games around the country. And we'll talk to you again next time on another episode of Locked On Canes. We are part of the awesome Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.